Similarly to adding multiple strokes, you can add multiple fills through the appearance window, as many fills as you want to, a single shape. Looking at these as just outlines, you can see these two circles are just a single shape. This one has just a fill, no stroke. This one has three fills on it and no stroke, right? So um, several fills to one shape, and then each of those fills can have its own opacity, meaning how transparent it is or how solid it is, blending modes, different effects, and the way that they start to combine together can create really less flat, more dynamic surfaces for shapes, essentially, richer textures, richer effects. So here's one that has this kind of classic deep depth, receding into the distance sort of illusion, just achieved through some gradients essentially. So if we break this apart, we have here these three fills. There's just a black one on the bottom that really doesn't matter. Then there's a gradient. In this case, just a radial gradient. If we click on edit it, you can see sort of how it's constructed here. In terms of where the slider positions are and so on. I'm going to click out of edit gradient by going back to just selecting it again. And then on top of that, actually just made a fill that's just a flat red color. No gradient or anything, it's just straight red. But then went into the opacity setting. Now if we have this at 100% opacity, and normal in terms of the blend mode, it's just a red shape over top of everything else. But if I start to change these blend modes, it's going to do very different things. And so multiply is one that then combines red pixels essentially with whatever's underneath it. They sort of combine together. And then by reducing the opacity a little bit, it just makes that multiplication or addition of those two types of color information a little less intense. And so the point being, opacity, blend modes, and stacking up multiple fills will allow you to essentially start to achieve, whether they're subtle color shifts or very dramatic color shifts, that's kind of the way to do it. So this one is just got a kind of a teal, colored fill on it. And then on top of that, there's a gradient. And selecting that, looking at the gradient, this is how it's configured. Just, going diagonally from corner to corner across the image there. But the gradient itself has, this side of it is 100% opaque at this color point, and this side it's actually still black, but the opacity here is 0, so it goes from black down to fully transparent. And it doesn't look like that at all right now, obviously, but if we go into the opacity area and change this from screen back to normal and shift the opacity back up to 100%, and then look at it again in terms of edit gradient, you can see much more clearly that that's black partway through here, right? So going into it and changing that back, the blend mode makes a big difference if it's on screen, and I do have to have the object selected. Clicking back on opacity, going back to screen, it actually sort of does the inverse of what that initial gradient looks like, because this is a lightening section. If I was doing darkening, it would do something completely different. But I'm just going to kind of use this to my advantage to lighten it and then make it more subtle by reducing the opacity of it. And this is something where if you're doing a drawing or a background or something, you can get a very subtle shift in hue or tint from kind of one side of the shape to the other, and looks very nice, very subtle. Something a bit more dramatic, something like this. So a series of fills stacked up on top of each other, starting with just a blue fill, and then we have one that's just a straight up gradient here, just a linear gradient, 3 different colors on it, kind of light to darker blue, back to lighter blue. Then on top of that, there is another one of those gradients that has opacity going from fully black down to nothing. This time I changed it to white, but it doesn't really matter because it's 0 opacity at that point anyway. And then same thing, play with the opacity, play with the blending mode, and normal would look one way, lighten would look a different way, screen would look in a different way, or whatever. In this case, I think I went with multiply because I wanted it to sort of be darker going across this way, and then throwing in another one, in this case just to create kind of a glass-like, glinty, reflective, mirror-like sort of surface, or whatever you want to think of it as. It's not perfect, but it's just an example. So here we have just another gradient, and in this case it's a radial gradient. Click on the shape, we can see how it's constructed here. It's actually kind of set off to the side a little bit, so that it's not dead center on the object, basically. So I kind of moved it over here, right? And I could do whatever, and this is just an example, nothing too fancy. But then setting the opacity a little less opaque so that it's less bright, essentially. So 86% instead of 100%, makes it just a little bit more subtle. And then doing some kind of blend mode to sort of combine it. Now the dark ones aren't going to do anything because this is white already, and you can't darken something with white. But if you go into the lightening blend modes, those can start to have sort of unexpected and interesting looks potentially. And you never really know until you start to play around with them. But something like screen in this case is probably going to be a good one to go with. So that's the idea. Playing around with multiple fills and then opacity blend modes are really key to how to start to do different looks.